much, I fell in love with it. Let's just start with the main card, and some of these fights we'll go a little bit deeper into, and some of them we'll just hit the surface level on them. But the first one we have is a heavyweight fight between Greg Hardy, former NFL player, and I think it's Jorgen De Castro, one of the fighters from the Contender Series a couple of months ago. So what's your first thoughts on this fight? And if you want to jump straight to the pick, feel free, because I know we'll have more on the other fights.
Yeah, man, I'm not too excited about this fight. To be perfectly honest with you, I am not a Greg Hardy fan whatsoever. If we keep it just to the fight game, I haven't been impressed with anything that I've seen from him. Now, the one thing about Greg Hardy is that he's a former NFL athlete, which means he is a freak of nature. I don't think people understand just how athletic NFL players are. To me, they are outside of gymnasts, but gymnasts is different, right? They're going to be the most physically developed people, and they can do things that you will not imagine that they can do. Yeah. And he's coming into this fight, he is much bigger. He is much bigger. So even if his skill set, right, I think he's still raw, but he's very athletic, and that gets him a long way. Yeah. And so, I'm going with it's a heavyweight fight, right? Yeah. It ain't going past 2 rounds. We know that. And so,
if it does, it's going to be boring. If it goes past 2, we're in trouble.
Exactly, especially with him. Yeah. So, I'm just going on him being bigger and his athleticism, and I want to see him. If they're going to keep him around, if they're going to keep on putting him on main cards, let's step him up a little bit, right? Yeah. Like if we're going to really do this thing, let's see you fight someone if you get past this, right? Because to just keep having him on, he wasn't some great linebacker. We know what he was. He got famous for beating women, and let's be very clear about that. I don't know. I was caught myself dancing around it. No, he got famous for beating women, not for being a great NFL player. That's why he's over here. So if you want to beat on people, let's see you beat on people. Let's step up in competition if you're going to be on these main cards that I'm excited about. Because, hey, I could see Cerrone get his head knocked off again instead of seeing Greg Hardy huff and puff or do a stupid disqualification move. Yeah, what happened? So, again, I'm giving him the edge just because he's a bigger dude, but I hope he gets his head knocked off.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that because I'm on the opposite side of that fight. I do like De Castro. Again, like you mentioned, Hardy's a freak of nature. Hardy's got the athleticism. I just watched a fight of him, and I think it was Volkov. I think he took notice, who was the number 7 ranked heavyweight. So it's not like he was a scrub, but I did notice that Volkov was able to keep Hardy at range and really did some damage with the leg kicks. And I don't think he focused on it as much as he should have.
Leg kicks.
And I don't think he focused on it as much as he should have. But I do know that I saw De Castro stop the guy on the Contender Series in the first round via leg kicks. And so I know that De Castro comes from a kickboxing background. He's almost just as raw. I mean, he only has 6 professional fights. It's not like he's, far ahead in advance of Greg Hardy. But I do like De Castro's power. I do like De Castro's kickboxing skill. And I think it comes down to anytime like somebody is coming over to MMA from a different sport, like for instance, there's been some boxers that have dabbled into it. It's always the things that aren't with your hands that throw people for the loop. So it's like, if it was a boxing match, I'm taking Greg Hardy. But because you're throwing the legs into it, I think De Castro has the power with the hands, but also can slow him down and keep him at bay with his legs, with his leg kicks, with body kicks. And I think over time, it starts to wear Hardy down. And I'm going to take De Castro in the second round via stoppage, whether that's via leg kicks or Hardy's legs give out and he finishes him on the ground. I do think De Castro takes it.
I would be glad to see that happen. Real quick, before we move on to the next fight, is De Castro Cuban?
I mean, I don't know if this is racist or stereotypical, but I have to guess he is. I feel like De Castro is.
He has a Hispanic last name and he's black, so he's probably Cuban.
I guess that's an assumption. I don't know, but I don't know.
Well, that would play into my assessment of what's gonna. Again, he's just a much smaller dude. He's only 6 feet 230.
Yeah.
And real quick, just to speak to athleticism of NFL players, Brock Lesnar, right? Remember that guy?
Yeah.
So Brock Lesnar was a Division I college wrestling national champion. Mm-hmm. He also was a WWE champion. He also was a UFC heavyweight champion. Yeah. And remember, he played for the Minnesota Vikings. Correct. Remember that?
Correct.
Like, football players can do weird things, and
I agree.
that's the only thing that I have going for him. But please, DeCastro, leg kick this dude, and let's talk about the next fight.
All right, sounds good. So we have Jeremy Stephens versus Calvin Kattar. I texted you earlier in the week, and I was just like, "Can we just skip this fight?" And I am upset that I text that. So I listened to some other podcasts. This is DC, Daniel Cormier's favorite fight of the night, which might be a little extra, but I did go back and watch a couple of fights by these dudes. And Kattar definitely does not back down, and he definitely has that. He definitely has that fighter spirit in terms of pushing the pace, fighting with volume. He's a very technical boxer, and I think if you really like mixed martial arts, I think that he can show a little bit in terms of boxing that makes the fight exciting. Stephens comes a little bit more, less volume, but more power. So I think anytime you have this volume versus power dynamic, you have the chance for a knockout, and you have the chance for just a complete technical clinic. And so I'm a little bit more excited about the fight than I was in the past. I'm definitely not calling it fight of the night. It's projected to go to a decision. I'm going to take Kattar by decision based purely on volume.
You know what? Just your analysis of this fight got me excited about it. Also,
well,
I appreciate you because
I put in work.
No, I appreciate it, and you could tell because I too was a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, and again, I think you were spot on. These are great fighters.
Yeah. Oh, on the card from top to bottom, and we skip great fights, and we'll dabble a little bit.
Yeah, we can say something. But Jeremy Stephens, his record, I don't think you got to watch Jeremy Stephens. And I think that's the important, especially with MMA and talking about wins and losses. And we're going to get into this way too deep in a little bit.
You know, we are.
I'm sorry, y'all, in advance because it's going to get heated and there might be some MFers, but we love each other and we never mean it. Just letting y'all know. But Jeremy Stephens is a dude you have to watch, right? Yeah. Because it's not only, that you lose, it's how you fight in that fight. I think another goal is Masvidal, right? Yeah. You look at Masvidal's record and say, oh, he's not that good. Do you want to fight George Masvidal? No. Do you want to fight Nick Diaz?
I've told you multiple times, I don't want to fight Amanda Nunes. So there's plenty of people I don't want to fight.
That's a whole nother story. That's a different story. But again, Jeremy Stephens is a guy you have to watch. His record ain't going to tell you, and you're right, he is an exciting fighter. Kattar also. This could be a fight of the night.
It's going to be good.
The only reason why it probably won't be is because there's some other great fights. But this fight, I can see it going 3 rounds. The only common fight they have is your boy that they both lost to.
Zabit.
They both lost to. But I went Stephens just because he is the vet, and the training circumstances around this fight are different. I sent you the article earlier just talking about the different training conditions. But one thing I didn't necessarily realize that I saw watching the embedded episode today was that some of these dudes have been training for this fight since January. They've gone through like 3 cycles of prep and training, and I know most people don't know what it was, but they've been basically grinding for a long time. Like other athletes kind of stay in shape year round. That's not how the fight game works. They do camps of 8 to 10 weeks, right, preparing for a fight. If they're not fighting, they're kind of just chilling for the most part, right? Because it's the grueling nature of the sport. So I think just with that, Jeremy Stephens being the vet that he is going to be a little bit more prepared for that stuff. But if Kattar beats him, I won't be surprised whatsoever.
Okay.
I did pick Stephens to win.
Okay. No, yeah. Now I watched another UFC analysis show, and they were just talking about how they really wish that this fight was like on one of the later, like a fight night as the main event, because they're like this fight needs more than 3 rounds. Like it's gonna go the distance, and it needs more. And like you said, it gets undervalued because of the other fights that are on the card.
It's a terrible spot. I mean, we can talk about that. Yeah. It's after a heavyweight fight, which will be exciting.
It's in between 2 heavyweight fights.
Exactly. So again, regardless of how I feel about Greg Hardy, heavyweight fights are fun to watch. So you'll watch that, right? And then you'll obviously want to watch the next fight, which I can't wait to get into. But then you have this one in the middle, right? And it's unless you're a big fight fan, you probably don't know who they are, haven't seen them fight too much, so to skip them. But there's a reason they're on this card, and so I think it might be the most entertaining fight of the night. So I am actually looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, definitely could be. So the next fight, as we mentioned, sandwiched between 2 heavyweight bouts. We've got Francis, and I can't say any of their names. Nagano. Is that right? Nagano. And then we have, I'm going to call him JR because I can't even think about it.
His last name is Rosenstruck.
Rosenstruck. Okay.
Yes.
Rosenstruck. What's his first name? Jair?
Rosenstruck.
Rosenstruck. You're right. Rosenstruck. So we've got two heavy hitters. Tre, who are you picking? I want to know that first, and then tell me why.
Actually, I'm going to surprise you with something. Okay.
You might not surprise as much as you think.
No, not with the pick, because I'm not going to talk about the pick first. Okay. I'm not going to talk about the hard hitting that's going to come. I'm not going to talk about. I'm just doing that.
You're an idiot.
No, I think the bigger question with this is, how long is this fight going to last?
I agree. And
how long? That's what I want to know. I want to know that prediction first. Can this be the rule? Can this be the tiebreaker for our pick'em?
How long lasts?
This fight particularly. I'm going 2:30 first round.
2:30 in the first.
2:30. How about you?
I am going to, and this is very disappointing to myself, to the MMA community. I am going Rosenstruck in a decision.
Okay.
And it pains me because you want to see these two heavy hitters go out and just slug it out, fight to the death, gladiator style. Somebody goes out.
Yeah.
I feel like they're going to respect the power too much, and this happened with Nagano and Derek Lewis, where you have these two heavy hitters who you feel are going to come out and just slug it out, and then you realize, hey, these people hit hard, and being in the ring with another man who hits hard makes you a little bit tentative. And Nagano was a little bit tentative in that fight, and I think that comes into play a little bit here. I mean, you got to think Rosenstruck knocked out Overeem, but that was with 5 seconds left. It was a very technical, not brawly type fight, and I think that is the kind of fight that we see here. And it's unfortunate because I would love to see somebody just get dropped, but I do think it goes to a decision. I do think Nagano is too tentative, and I do think Rosenstruck takes it via decision, and the boring fight of the night won't beat Adesanya and Romero, but it will be far more boring than I believe people expect it to be.
I would like to have a different noise for hot takes, but that's what we got right now. So I'm gonna give that to you. And no, I think I respect you for going out on a ledge by thinking that a heavyweight fight will be the most boring. But I do respect that because, again, looking at the Derek Lewis fight, I did go back and rewatch that. Nagano, he was completely tentative, right? And that's why Derek Lewis. I love his personality. I think he has skills. He has power, obviously, but he is not a better fighter than Francis Ngannou.
No.
That's why I walked away from that fight thinking, I'm like, okay,
and Nagano's not that polished either, so that's saying a lot. Like, he's not that polished.
Well, let's get into that a little bit because speaking to those fights, we look at the Lewis Nagano fight, right, where Nagano lost specifically because he was tentative.
Yeah.
And then let's go to the Overeem and Lewis fight, which was a complete snooze fest before Rosenstruck literally knocked his face off. If y'all haven't seen it, go and look. Watch the last 10 seconds of the fight. He literally knocked Alisher Overeem's complete face off. And that just happened, right? That just happened in a couple months ago. So I doubt Derek Lewis comes into this fight with a mentality like, I'm not going to fight. Like,
which one? Sorry, you said Lewis, Rosenstruck or Nagano?
You know I have a problem with the name.
I know. I just want to clarify for the viewers.
I appreciate you keeping me about. I know. I appreciate you. Thank you. No,
there'll be enough confusion later.
Rosenstruck. I believe that he comes in the aggressor in this fight for that reason. His last fight, and again, we know that it ain't just that's your one. It's how you won, right? Yeah. And luckily for him, again, he did knock his face off, so that's why he got this. But he spent 24 minutes, messing around a little bit, and the boss don't like that. So if you want to continue to get these chances, you got to come out and win. And to be perfectly honest, that's his only path to victory. He has to come and establish himself. He has to make Nagano timid. Yeah. Now, on the Nagano one, again, I walked away from that fight thinking Nagano was a better fighter. And
I agree.
And I think what Nagano walked away thinking is, I'm the better fighter. In his last 3 fights, he's proved it. In the last 3 fights, he came out and beat Blaze in the first round. He beat Velasquez in the first round. He beat Luis Dos Santos in the first round. And what was he? The aggressor. Even if the King Velasquez fight, even if you say, okay, his knee went out, which it did, his knee went out because he was getting beaten in the face.
It didn't just collapse.
It's not like he was just standing up, like he was walking in the ring and he hit some water and was like, oh, snap, my knee. No, he was getting hit in the face and he was turned awkwardly to catch it. And his knee went out and you know, he lost the fight. So, you know, I think Nagano, one, has fixed that. And two, again, I think he's a little bit more technical than we think he is. He has... I don't see holes in his game. I don't see where he can't attack him. I think he is a more polished fighter than Rosenstrike. Okay, now the power thing is a different thing, and so I think Rosenstrike could easily knock him out. Rosenstrike could knock out a mountain if he wanted. Either one of them. I think this is going to be a very heavyweights are hard to watch.
Yeah.
It's painful because every hit hurt. You can feel it. You can hear it. I don't think this goes more than, again, 230 in the first round. Someone's getting knocked out in this. I have, and I think Nagano is going to knock him out. I think he's the best. I think those losses for him are going to be huge for him going forward. He knows what it's like to lose and knows what it's like to lose because he didn't fight the fight he should have fought. Right. And I so think that gives him what he needs to go forward and establish himself, hopefully as a champion. Because I think he kicks Stipe's ass against Nagano. Seriously, I don't. And I think Stipe's great. Don't get me wrong. But if Nagano gets past this, he has a title fight waiting for him. So.
All right. Well, sounds good. Like I said, it pains me to think that it's going to go to decision. And as an MMA fan and me, I'm going to be watching the card. So I really hope it doesn't. I want to see somebody get dropped. But my gut says when there's this kind of anticipation, it only leads to disappointment. But no, definitely, I am 110% for either one of them by knockout very early in the first round. I hope it's Rosenstrike for the sake of my FanDuel lineups. But for the next, on to the next fight. And I think this is one that we've had some prior discussion about.
Hey, Trent.
What's up?
Did I tell you I love you yet today?
Not yet, Trey.
All right, I love you, man. I just want to go on record as saying that.
Before we get started, well, I love you too, good.
This might get personal, man.
All right, the next fight. Bantamweight Championship. Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz. Trey, would you like to go first or would you like for me to go first?
So, we have Henry Cejudo. He's still the champ in my eyes. Okay? He ain't lost. Ain't nobody beat him. And so he is a dual weight champion coming in, fighting. Hey, I don't like the guy. And he's, I rep San Diego to the fullest. I rep Southeast to the fullest. At one point, I'm gonna get it here. Put it on me. Or I'll go Tupac and put it on my stomach, right? Southeast, right? And Dominic Cruz is from San Diego. He is, but he ain't family, man. He might as well. He ain't family. He ain't it. Like I said, I'm a Uriah Faber dude. Okay, Uriah Faber and Dominic Cruz got beef, which means so you got beef with me. Like I am Earl Thomas's wife's friend. Okay, so if Uriah Faber send me the text and saying, "Hey, we about to go right on Cruz," it's what it is. Now to get into the analysis of the fight, I think it's very simple. Henry Cejudo has been on a tear. He beat the greatest, is it Bantam or Fly? I forget what they are.
Fly, if you're talking about DJ.
Yeah, they beat the best. He finally defeated the best flyweight of history, right? And I still think he's the best flyweight. I do think Demetrius Johnson won that fight, but again, Henry Cejudo fought a great fight. And even going back to their previous fight, I thought Henry won the fight that he actually lost. So he fought the best fighter in the world at that weight class to two great fights, which tells me you're good. He then after that beat up one of the Chads. Okay.
Can you wait? Hold on. I need you to explain the Chad thing for our viewers because I have the background on Chad. I need you to explain the background on Chad so that they know which one of the three you're referring to at any given moment.
I'm glad you asked that question about the Chads because not only will I explain the Chads, I have a game for you. This is a surprise segment. Okay.
I don't like surprises.
Yeah, I know you don't. That's why I brought this one in. Okay.
Yeah, that's surprise too.
So, the Chad thing. But I finally admitted this week that I can't tell people apart. And actually, I was thinking about this more today because I was planning this game for you, specifically for this. but it's just dudes. Okay, I can tell women apart. Like I can, but dudes I cannot tell apart. It doesn't matter your race, color, creed. I can't tell you apart. So the reason how we got to the Chads was we were talking about TJ Dillashaw, Dustin Poirier, and Justin Gaethje, and I have no clue which one is which. I make very passionate arguments for or against one of those three dudes, and I have no clue which one I'm actually talking about. And so I decided to just call them Chad, right? However, Chad is not a pejorative term, just like, folks will tell you Karen is, because most of the Chads I know actually aren't even white. And to prove that, we are going to play a game called Name That Chad.
Oh my gosh. The fact that you have a game is absolutely classic.
Right? Yeah. You like the surprise, don't you?
That's funny.
All right, everybody. This is Tre Watkins coming to you. This is the first edition of Name That Chad. Now, I will give you a clue. All these Chads are famous, so you should have some recollection of who they are. There will be 3 of them, and I will give you 3 clues, and you will have 10 seconds to give me an answer. Are you ready, Trenton?
I am ready.
Number 1, Chad. I am a former American football player. I played my collegiate football at Oregon State University.
Ooh.
I was also a contestant on Dancing with the Stars. Which Chad am I?
Oh, that's easy. You're talking about my favorite football player of all time, Chad Johnson. Chad Ochocinco.
No, I see. I knew you were going to be nervous about the surprise, so I wanted.
I was, because I was like, wait a minute, I don't know who played at Oregon State.
Didn't I tell you I love you?
Appreciate it.
Hey, and shout out to Chad. First of all, he went to Oregon State, but he came through Santa Monica City College.
Really?
Yeah, that's where my grandma Laura was from. That's where my mom is from. So shout out to Santa Monica City, baby.
I did not know that.
But that's where my last collegiate game was actually at Santa Monica City. I got an interception, but went out on a high note. But shout out to Chad. So that was the guy. So you're 1 for 1 first. All right. Second, Chad. I was also an American football player. And I was a first-round pick out of Marshall University. I played quarterback position. Which Chad am I? A little bit difficult, right?
The only Chad quarterback I know is Chad Pennington.
Chad Pennington, yes it is. Yes it is. We are 2 for 2.
They're going to think I have the answers already.
2 for 2 in the Name That Chad game. I love this. No,
I'm gonna need another drink before this is over.
I'm out. You're right. We're gonna have to refill at some point. All right, Name That Chad number 3. Can he go 3 for 3 in the initial show of Name That Chad? I am not a professional athlete. However, I played the most important baseball player to ever play the game. I also played the Godfather of Soul. But now you can call me the King and Protector of Wakanda. Which Chad am I?
You are Chadwick Boseman,
the
Black Panther himself. That's hilarious.
Hey, shout out to Trent, baby, going 3 for 3.
3 for 3.
Name That Chad. Okay, so getting back to my original point. All right, so Henry Cejudo.
I see why you apologize for this segment way in advance, because this is super long for this fight.
Ain't nothing else going on, baby. Y'all can hear me, and this is great analysis you getting, right?
It is. I must agree.
Hey, if you're not a fight fan, you about to be after you listen to this. So let me get back to my analysis and tell you why Henry Cejudo about to get in that ass. So he beat Demetrius Johnson, the greatest flyweight of all time. Then he washed Dillashaw in the first round. Let's remember, Chad Dillashaw was on the juice. Okay? Let's remember that. Chad Dillashaw was on the juice on that fight. He still got washed in the first round, like wash, right? I went back and watched it because remember, he was complaining about an early stoppage. Bruh.
No, he was out. Like, we all know he was out. The boy was
doing that. Can we stop doing interviews right after a fight when a fighter gets knocked out? That's got to be a thing. Like, we got to stop. Yeah. And then he beat Marlon Moraes, who again is a bigger fighter, was the number 1 contender. And we can talk about why fights get made. We can get into that a little bit, but there's something to be said about a champion fighting whoever's next up, right? Mm-hmm. And beating them. And what I saw in that fight was Henry Cejudo destroy Marlon Moraes' will to win. He did not want to fight anymore. The only comparison that I have is football, right? And unfortunately, too many times in my career, I was on the other side of not wanting to hit anymore, because the full purpose of football is to run into other people until one side says, I don't want to do this no more. Mm-hmm. And that's why I see in Henry Cejudo fights, his wrestling is elite of the elite. We can talk about these, national championship contenders and all that kind of stuff and whatnot. If you made the Olympics, you cool, right? You on another step. Henry Cejudo is an Olympic gold wrestling champion. So he is the elite of the elite. Ain't no way he's getting taken down. And Dominic Cruz with his, pig ligaments in both of his knees. Good luck, bruh. Number 2, Henry Cejudo hits so hard. His hands are extremely hard. He reminds me actually of Jan Sepulveda. You do not expect for him to have that type of power. And it's interesting seeing guys who thud and hit hard. It's like, okay, he surprisingly hits hard. And then pow, hits hard. Like there is something there. And when Henry Cejudo connects with a clear shot, people go down. I didn't realize Cruz hadn't fought since 2016. The last time Cruz fought, he got beat by Chad Dillashaw.
No, it was Chad Garbrandt.
One of them, one of the Chads. Where's Garbrandt at? And I love. He is. Hold on. Thank you for putting him in there. He is definitely a Chad Garbrandt. And I was a big Cody Garbrandt fan, and I thought he had all the skills, and he ain't nowhere. And Cruz ain't fought since 2016. Dude's getting killed. What you got?
All right. Well, I'm glad we're on opposite ends of this fight.
No, you're not, because this is a win for me. And just championship fights count for 2 points. So this is.
Wait, since when did that happen?
It's now, man. Just agree to it, dog.
All right, Henry Cejudo, Dominic Cruz. Let's start with Henry Cejudo first. You're right. Olympic champion. No disrespect. Can't doubt that at all. At 121 pounds. This fight is at bantamweight, which I believe is 135. Correct? Henry Cejudo is a big flyweight. Don't get me wrong. So the size difference will not be that significant. However, if you have 10 to 15 pounds on an individual in the fight game, that means you're probably walking around even larger than that. Correct?
Yep.
So, and not to say that Dominic Cruz is the largest bantamweight out there. However, when you step up in a weight class such as that, it's a major difference. Sure, Cejudo did it already, fought Marlon Moraes, beat him, right?
He's a champion. Let's establish that. He is the champ in this division.
I agree. However, who is the greatest bantamweight of all time?
Dominic Cruz.
Coming off a layoff, not coming off a layoff, he's done this before. Came off of a layoff, absolutely dominated. I can't think of his name at this point. First round knockout. Almost a year later, dominates. I don't know if that time was your boy, Uriah Faber. Absolutely put paws on him, right? Another layoff, comes back, beats TJ Dillashaw, right? So, and Dominic Cruz will tell you himself, ring rust is all mental. And this is a man who says it does not mean a thing. I absolutely believe him because he has proven it. Talking about Cejudo's wrestling, coming up in weight class, he is an Olympian again. Let me reiterate that. We are now talking about the top defensive wrestler in bantamweight history. We're talking about Dominic Cruz defending 83% of takedowns. Let's dial it back a little bit about Cejudo, right? Because yes, he has a knockout against Morales. He knocked out Dillashaw, who came down in weight, and everybody at the beginning of that fight said TJ Dillashaw looked way too small to compete.
And he was on the juice.
Fine. Still way too small to compete on that night. Got dropped. Before that, Henry Cejudo was not known as a striker. These last 2 fights, he's been able to knock 2 people out. His primary thing is wrestling. And if you're telling me that, I believe, I won't say if you're telling me, I believe that Olympic wrestler or not, you're going up against the greatest bantamweight wrestler in the division defensively, which means to me, Cejudo might get a takedown or 2. I have not seen a fight where Dominic Cruz has been held down. I do think Cejudo gets a takedown or 2. I don't think Dominic Cruz has never allowed a pass on the ground, ever in his career. Never. This is stats. Has never allowed a pass. So he's getting up off the ground, right? So now you're telling me Henry Cejudo, who has been a decent striker for the past two fights, Right. And again, question marks on decent. He knocked people out. So, you don't get to see the full breadth of his striking ability, but we know that there's power there.
Hey man, real quick, I'm just glad you ain't got to see Henry Cejudo because you're being real disrespectful, dude. Like I'm saying, dude won the Olympics.
Oh, I already gave you props for that.
Hold on. All I'm saying is like I talk big and bad when we on the phone and in text, but I ain't bad mouthing none of the dudes besides Greg Hardy. If Greg Hardy want to get it, he can get it, right?
Trey, please do not.
I'm just saying, like, hey, Henry.
No, don't walk in foot. Don't walk.
Henry, Henry, hey, bro. I'm just saying, like, I think Trent want to see you, bro.
I already said I'm starting to train. If I can get down to 135, I'm coming for him.
He said you was 121, bro. He said you nothing, bro.